Welcome to Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. I'm Butch Nicholson, and I'll be your host today. Uh, One thing we all know is that the buyer's journey has changed. It used to be buyers had to meet with a salesperson to get information. I mean, there was nowhere else to get it, except for those of you who are really older. You might remember the old Sears catalog. That was one way to get it if you wanted to buy from them. But whatever you're watching us today on, these have changed all that. But one thing has remained true: people still want to buy from somebody they know, like, and trust. That hadn't changed. The way you build know, like, and trust has changed, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So I am really happy to have my friend Stephen Wilson on the show today. I've known Steven for maybe 3 years, 2 years, something
Yeah,
like that.
not that
And
good.
one thing I know is that he knows how to use the new social tools because he is present everywhere, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Steven, why don't you start and just give us a little of your background, how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, first, let me start by saying thank you, Butch, for having me on this morning. I'm honored and humbled that you would ask. Yeah. So again, I'm Stephen Wilson with my wife and I, Betsy. We lead WSI Wilson Group. We're a full service marketing agency located here in Roswell, but we serve Alpharetta and the surrounding local communities and cities. We help small and medium-sized businesses strategically use marketing, and so we really like growing, helping growth-minded businesses know more about who they're marketing to, what to say, and where it counts the most. So we like to say we don't believe in random acts of marketing. A little bit about our journey. Wow, I feel like we've been kind of all over the map in terms of our careers and what we've done. But I got started in the restaurant business a long, long time ago and learned a lot about service and serving others and, really putting the needs of others ahead of my own and dealing with people and leadership, and carried that into a venture where a few friends of mine that we met together in the restaurant business built an environmental engineering company that ended up becoming an industry leader in that space for nearly 25 years. And I guess it was 2022 or 23, my wife and I had been talking about starting our own business for some time. And so we decided to get into marketing, and we started our marketing agency with the sole purpose of making and building community relationships and connections, and helping local businesses in the community grow their business using the experience that my wife and I gained over many, many years combined in corporate America. So that's our story, Butch.
So, Stephen, I have to ask. I've never met anybody that was in the restaurant business, decided to get into an engineering field, and then from an engineering field to marketing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So, the great thing about it, what you were saying earlier about how much things have changed, just even in the early days when in the last restaurant uh, post that I served was with Outback Steakhouse about 25, 6 years ago. Now, we did a lot of ground roots marketing. We really got out in the community, got on the streets, really, beat the pavement, if you will, going to local schools and businesses and things of that nature. And that was it, right? That was word of mouth marketing. That's just kind of how it was done. And then when we started our engineering and consulting business, it wasn't a whole lot different when we first started that, but as we started to grow that business, the online presence piece of it became more relevant and necessary. And so that's really the main experience that I kind of draw from, was just those feelings of when we first started realizing, hey, we need a website, we need an online presence, we need LinkedIn profiles, we need all of those things. And uh, you know, how do you do that? Who do you ask to do that? Do you try to do it yourself? while trying to run a business? Do you use friends or, people that they trust, or hire a marketing agency, or, how do you do that? And so, I felt all those feelings and went, initially through that, trying to do it myself. We tried to take on that, quote unquote burden ourselves, but also try to run the business. And really what that equaled up to is we weren't really doing that as well as we should have. And, because the day to day is what really takes the priority. And so a lot of lessons learned in that period of time, but understanding what it meant to have an online presence, to be consistent with it, to know who and what who you're connecting with and what you're trying to say to them, were all valuable lessons that I learned that really helped us in this next stage of having our own marketing business. And so that's where the passion comes from, is from that place, is just knowing and understanding through experience what business owners and leaders go through every day, trying to understand and navigate this crazy world of marketing we all live in these days.
Well, you've certainly had what's your next venture going to be?
That's a great question. Who knows, right?
Who knows? It'll show up, or it'll show up.
Exactly. Chooses us sometimes, right?
Absolutely. So, Stephen, when I started in sales over 45 years ago, we did have a punch, the punch phone. We could punch the numbers to make a phone call. We had a switchboard operator, so if somebody called us, they had to go through that. We made cold calls. We sent out, we had actual mail, because there was no email. And really, the way you made connections to build trust was somehow face to face, with a handshake, and going from there.
Sure.
And it's certainly evolved from there. Say a little bit about your journey from how the trust building aspect was when you started in business, and what that looks like today.
Wow. So I would say that relationship and connection piece hasn't changed a whole lot. I think that's still, relevant today as it was, back in the day. You hit on it earlier in the intro, the know, like, and trust piece. I think that's still critical. How you tell that message may have changed, right? I mean, there's all different places for you now to tell that story, if you will, or get that message out. But there's still a piece of it that really is completely reliant on this kind of connection. Whether it's the one-to-one meetings, or showing up in the local community through service projects, or whether it's a local chamber or a business association. Those connections, that relationship building, I don't believe has changed a whole lot. I think if you want to, or you're serious about growing your business and moving your business forward, you have to be connected to the community through whatever local organizations that there are out there. And there's many of them, and there's some really great ones that, help you grow your business through, shared experiences and mutual connection. I think that's just the critical piece, and it will never, that piece of it never will change. Now, all the different places to get that message out, well, that's another story altogether. But it's still important. You know how it is, Butch.
Absolutely. Well, again, talking about trust, there has to be about. We do business all over the country.
Sure.
And we use digital to do that. And I believe there are two different aspects of digital. One is at least, pardon me, at least is using digital to put your reputation out there, put out there who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people want to know who you are before they care what you do.
I agree.
And digital is now a big part of that, especially for companies like ours. Talk a little bit about the kind of the shift from all face to face to having digital. And there is one great thing about digital. You can get in front of a whole lot more people with digital. You
Yeah,
can go
you're
to, and I'm active in a lot of groups. You can go to groups, the old fashioned networking meeting, but you were limited to the people that were there. And we have platforms now like LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is basically a 24/7, 365 network meeting.
You're absolutely right. It is. Specifically, LinkedIn is just a sort of an online extension of your networking efforts, and you're right. In terms of the what I call sort of one-to-one marketing versus one-to-many marketing. You're right. I mean, there's only so much time in the day. If you're a busy business owner and you're out there, doing all the things, from a showing up for that, early morning networking event to the after hours and if you're involved in multiple different business associations or chambers, there's almost something to do every single day of the week. But you still have a business to run. So at some point, you got to sort of measure your time with, the one-to-one, what I call one-to-one marketing with the one-to-many marketing. And so, that's the piece that I think has that change or that shift in what it means to like be able to grow your business. And getting that part of it right is just as crucial as the one-to-one piece, right? Like who you are, what you do, who you help, and then being known for the problem that you solve, are all critical components in that. But you're absolutely right. You're almost known for who you are versus what you do these days. And having clarity in that message, knowing who you're speaking to, those are all huge pieces of that. And those are sort of the non-negotiables of what we believe in as far as how successful strategic marketing can be, is really outlining and defining who that is. Who are you talking to? And where are they, and their how to meet with them and that buyer journey, if you will. That's critical, and having that message that resonates with them is a big piece of that too. So I think we've all kind of heard that phrase, if you market to everyone, you're marketing to no one. Well, I believe that to be kind of more fundamentally true now than ever.
Right. Oh, right. Stephen, I've never talked to you about this, but you just said something that this question popped into, or this discussion popped into my mind. Uh, I've been in sales, like I said, I've been in sales forever. One thing that's always driven me crazy is tactics and strategy.
Sure.
And I mean, it just seems like everybody, 90% of salespeople, CEOs get lost in the tactics because they have no strategy.
Yeah, so that's a great question. For us, it is something that we hear all the time, right? Whether it was whether it's a business owner or a business leader that we're talking to, and they've heard someone say to them they need to be on Instagram, or we need to show up here, or we need to have a voice there, whatever that may be. And they may be right, but the idea there is what we're talking about. Those are tactics, and when we want a better shot at our marketing investment being spent or invested wisely and getting that return on that, there has to be a strategy in place for those tactics. And I also think too that there are a lot of competition out here in the marketing space, right? And so a lot of great marketing agencies do a lot of great work out there. And the ones that I have relationships with, they also like to lean into this piece too, right? We need to understand what the business goals are, and we need to understand what that looks like, what it is, whether it's revenue, whether it's more clients. What does that number look like? What does that dollar amount look like? What are we trying to achieve? Where we're trying to go, whether that's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goal. And we need to align our marketing strategy with helping you achieve those business goals. Like that's a non-negotiable piece of this that is really what we build as sort of that foundation. So if you're growth minded as a business owner or business leader, that is really what you want to know going into any engagement with anyone from a marketing standpoint. Is in that conversation, have that in mind when you go into those discussions. What am I trying to achieve through my marketing? What goals are we trying to achieve with that marketing? And then let's build the right tactics to help you achieve that marketing goal. That's critical. It's backwards if you don't do it that way. At least
Well,
that's what we.
I was actually gonna say, it really sounds like and from what you said about marketing, you need to do it backwards. Where do we figure out where you want to be before you start deciding how you're going to get there?
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We were reverse engineer back, right? And so, like I love to hear those stories. 10 years from now, where do you want to be 10 years from now? 5 years from now? I love to hear that because those are ultimately those dreams that we all have as business owners, right? That dream of whether it's a certain level of profitability. I want to be known for this particular thing, or whatever it may be. Those are your dreams. It could be I want to be on a beach in 10 years, or whatever it might be. Like, like if I can help in some way help a business grow to the point to where they achieve their goals and achieve their dreams as business owners and business leaders, man, how amazing is that? If I could be some small part in that process, and that develops a relationship and a bond and a connection there, that really ties you together in what I call a very relational type of sort of business relationship there, like that is just, I think, sort of the sweet spot. Like that to me is why we do what we do, is to help businesses achieve their business goals through marketing.
So let me ask you this, Stephen, because I run into this on the sales side. Um,
Sure.
Company's not meeting its goals,
Mm,
so the sales manager or the sales leader or the CEO is we need to do more. You know, we need to increase calls from 50 a day to 70 a day. We need to send more emails, whatever it is. But I always believe you know, if if you're what you're doing is not working, doing more of what you're not work is not working is going to keep not working.
right.
Do you see that on the marketing side that people just get locked in on, this is the way we do it?
I do, to a certain extent. I think at this point and just kind of where we're all at these days, I very rarely come across a business that hasn't worked with someone in marketing previously. So, it isn't always desperate times, desperate measures. Sometimes it's just, you know, a, a business owner has put some thought into what they're trying to achieve and realize that what they've been doing isn't going to help them get to that point where they've plateaued a little bit. And I feel like the plateau sometimes is a dangerous place. You can get comfortable, you can get set in old ways, but as good leaders, good business owners, tend to do, they kind of always have their thoughts, another step or two down the road. And sort of that's kind of where I find myself coming into that conversation is, we've done this, and gotten to this point, but we're looking at trying to take this to the next level, whether it's, opening another location, entering into some sort of licensing agreement, or, I want to create more connections and more relationships, whatever that is, that is the more commonplace that we are kind of in that fold. And so for me, it's it's never a situation where I sit down, in an early stage of an intro or discovery call and automatically think, oh, I've got the right solution for you, I know exactly what it is. It is an ongoing conversation with a business owner, a business leader that goes over all of those things, like what's worked, what hasn't worked, what are you feeling, what do you think, where are you guys at in this arc of your business, and using all of those conversations and that information to really start to understand the business's mission, their vision, their values, understand what their culture is, and how can we use those things that have obviously worked to get you there to help amplify that, and get you in front of more people. And not only that, but obviously the engagement piece, or the visibility piece is important, but you need engagement, you need leads, you need to be able to convert those leads in some way, some manner. So you know all of those things, in terms of a funnel, are critical points. And how do we get you moving down that funnel and getting you closing business? Because ultimately that's what we're here to do, right? Is to help
Yep.
you generate leads, and hopefully help you convert some of that.
So when I think of marketing, the first thing I think of, if you've got a brand, and the question isn't about brand new companies, it's about all companies.
Sure.
But when you got a brand new company, the first thing you think is, okay, we got to have a website.
Right.
And then you get a website, and then people start flooding you with how we can increase your SEO. And this, Stephen, you can get yourself at the top of that SEO list if you're willing to pay enough money. It might be a whole lot, but it'll get you to the top. But that doesn't guarantee any sales. So talk about how you help your customers align their websites with their business, their business goals, their business activity, what they really need to do.
That's a great question. So you're absolutely right. At this point, I don't come across many businesses that don't already have some sort of online presence, meaning website. The piece that I think is the critical part is understanding who your ideal client is. And that's usually the least common piece that business owners know, right? Like they've just always known, hey, we need a website, we need some social media profiles. Whether you're B2B or B2C, it still may be important for you to have a LinkedIn profile. So all of these digital assets, these digital marketing assets, we know that we need these. Okay, great. So the question is what are we going to do in order to help you make those digital assets more successful? Easy is I've gone in, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and the last time you posted was 2022, right? Obviously we're not consistent there. We're not putting out a message. Okay, got that. But from a website standpoint, and now the way modern search works, I think it's even more critical these days to understand who you're marketing to. That's a huge piece of it. Like you've really got to get that locked down. So a part of what we do is that ideal client profile, and help you understand. We do workshops with clients to build those out. We do empathy mapping and that buyer journey. And when we bring those things together, that brings a tremendous amount of clarity, because what you really start to understand is who do I like doing business with, right? There's a sweet spot. Every business has one, right? There's that one group, niche, whatever, of clients that not only do you really serve in a really high capacity, but you also realize that those are typically the types of clients that generate you the most revenue, right? So why wouldn't we want to make sure that we message to those individuals, those kinds of clients, the kinds of things that we need to attract more of them, right? And so that's where we really want to lean into. And so if you're talking about content on the website, or whether it's SEO in whatever capacity, because that's kind of shifting and changing, but understanding who you're marketing to, understanding who your highest revenue generating clients are, and developing content and creating content that's going to resonate with them and help you attract more of those kinds of clients is a strategic use of marketing. I mean, that by definition, I cannot give you a better example of that. And so that's the kind of things that, when we step into a relationship, we're fostering that thought and that, line of questioning and conversation that helps you sort of really narrow in on that.
Yep. We could do a whole show on this, so let's not talk about it right now. But my experience is the biggest problem most companies have is they believe they know who their ideal client prospect is, and they're doing their marketing, they're doing all their outreach toward them, and that's not who their ideal customer profile is. But we'll talk about that on another day.
Okay.
So, Stephen, for everybody, the big shiny tool in the room is AI.
Yes.
So, talk about how you deal with your clients around AI.
Sure. Great. That's another great question. I see surveys a lot. I think we all do, right? 53% of, the United States is not sure about AI and so on and so forth. And what I like to tell everybody is just like, take a deep breath. Just everybody take a deep breath. Humanity is not about to be taken over. You know, Really, if you think about this way, it's only been really in the last 3 to 4 years that OpenAI has come online, or ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, AI Overview. Those things have really come online in a very short period of time, and so whether you embraced it early on or you're still not sure about what it even means for you, um, it's really easy to educate yourself. And so that's the part of it where I kind of like tell everybody, let's just take a deep breath and really look at it from the standpoint of, um, no matter what it is that we are doing, there's always got to be a human involved in that process. It still doesn't matter what you use ChatGPT for, what you don't use it for. You are always going to be the difference maker. Who you are is only going to be amplified through the use of AI. So it isn't meant to replace anyone. But what I have seen, and I talked to it a little bit because I had a feeling you were going to ask me about this, is just kind of where we're at and what modern search is looking like these days. And I like to refer to it as search everywhere optimization, because you're right, that game has kind of changed a little bit. And, between AI overview, ads, the map pack, videos, whatever that may be, before you even get to the what used to be the holy grail of SEO, which was being in the top 10, ranking on the first, page, or the first search engine results page of the SERP. That was sort of the holy grail, right? I mean, that's what you mentioned or alluded to earlier. That's what companies spent, money on over a period of time to really build up that what is referred to as the EAT acronym, the experience, authority, and trust. And now you've got all of these different things that are on top of that. And I give this analogy. It's like you're the headline band with 4 opening acts. And before, you took the stage, the crowds wore out. So the next evolution of that, for us at least, is where we are now at, as far as how does AI affect search? Where now are we getting answers to questions about, restaurants in the local community, businesses in the local community that we're trying to learn more about and find? Um, you know, are we searching the same way as we used to? And the answer to that question is no. And I know from my own personal experience, it isn't. Funny story. I am jokingly, of course, I was able to buy a Ferrari on ChatGPT. Could have easily bought one. a house, gotten that house mortgaged, all using ChatGPT. And it was actually something that they rolled out Monday, where it's actually going another step further, where you don't even have to leave the platform to actually do purchase e-commerce. That's going to be built straight into ChatGPT. That's coming. But what I find interesting is when you're going through that process, it literally shows you, it cites you, that gives you the citations in a panel next to it about where it gets its information from. And a lot of times, the eye-opening piece to that is you're so it's you may be a member of the Better Business Bureau. You could have a really well set up Yelp profile. Or it could be a single page on your website that really defines who you are, some awards that you've won, reviews, things of that nature. Or it could be an FAQ page on your website. Those are the things that are getting you found on ChatGPT that are listed right there in the citations panel when you go through those processes. And what I find interesting is when I'm doing that for our clients, you can literally ask, right? Your client is a great client. He's done great work, or she in the community, been around for a long time, and they're not in that top 10 suggested top 10 businesses, whatever the category is. And you're like, why aren't they? And the funny thing is like ChatGPT will tell you, well, I don't know. I'm not sure why they're not in there, actually. You're right. They should be. And would you like for me to have them in there? And obviously that's not genuine at that point. But it will literally give you the feedback as to why you're not ranking in search on AI. But to me, that's the shift. Like the recommendations it gave me for realtors or people that I know, for lending and mortgage, those were people that I know. The Ferrari dealership, actually, I didn't actually ask it for a Ferrari. I just said a sports car, but it gave me a Ferrari and I couldn't resist. But I could do all of those things through ChatGPT. I could find businesses, I could find houses and listings. I could, it's incredible now. And what you're getting isn't a diluted answer anymore. You're getting like I call it, you're not being found, you're being chosen. And AI is making that determination for you based on trust and authority and having clarity in message. Those are the keys these days to getting found, not just on Google search, but also AI overview and other AI platforms.
But Steven, you said something right there that I'm actually making a note of, is that how do you say you're not being found, you're being chosen?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, Steven, I got about 10 more questions I want to ask you, but we are running out of time. But let
Yes.
me ask you this one, because I think this is really important. I think
Sure.
as salespeople, marketing people, CEOs, any of us, if we can put our ego and pride aside, what we learn from most is our failures. So talk about a deal you didn't get, but you learned something from it that got you another deal.
Wow. That's a great question. So talking about AI, interestingly enough. So I think we've all been on enough Zoom calls these days where, we have all of our note takers in a Zoom call meeting. I'm just like everybody else. But I had a very interesting experience not long ago where I was right in the middle of our sales process, if you want to call it that. And so I had a call with a local home services business where when we got to the end of it and I'd kind of presented our solutions and our recommendations and given, the investment levels and things like that, it just felt like there was a lot of uncertainty there. And so when we got off the call, I was just like, gosh, what just happened there? There was some interesting questions that I was being asked. I couldn't figure out why I was being asked those questions because I never even really brought up what those questions were even being based off of. And so what I've been doing for quite some time now because I'm always interested in incrementally trying to improve on, objection handling or, my listening or, whatever it is, because we could always be better. I always feel like, being more valuable to conversations like that is an ongoing work in progress. So I've gotten to a point, and I joke around about this. Amy Sulka would love to hear this. So when I'm done with a call, I take a transcript and I put it into ChatGPT, and I ask ChatGPT to, based on Sandler sales training, it could be, that's just kind of what I'm familiar with, but it could be anyone that you trust that brings some value in this sales discussion, using cellular methodologies and terminology. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I get better at? And just like give it to me straight, right? So essentially, what ChatGPT told me is like, hey, dummy, she's comparing what you just said in your proposal to someone else's, another business's proposal, and she's having a hard time connecting why they're recommending one thing and you're recommending another.
That's scary.
And man, that hit me like a ton of bricks because I just didn't hear that. And it wasn't like it went into the transcript and pointed directly to that point in the call that this is where she said that. But what it did is it really just like opened my eyes up to that to the fact that not only was it right, but it gave me an avenue to reach back out to this business owner. And so I did. And I said, when I reached back out to him, I said, listen, I got something else that I'd like to discuss with you. It's just a little bit of a shift about what we talked about the other day, but I'd love to come back to the discussion and answer any questions you may have. And this business owner was like, "That's amazing because I had some questions and some follow up for you, and let's do it." So I did. And I got back on the phone and I asked her. I said, "Are you trying to compare me to? Do you have another proposal that you're trying to compare?" And she was like, "Yes, I am." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, "Wow, chat." So essentially, that other marketing business company was recommending you should do all of these different tactics. And she was trying to figure out why I wasn't recommending to do those. And what I told her essentially is the reason why I didn't ask you to do that is like fundamentally, there are other things that you need to get right before we start talking about those things. And I actually had those things listed in this sort of preliminary marketing roadmap that I had put out for her so she could just kind of see. It was just much further down the road than right away, right? So I'm not just pushing tactics onto her. I'm actually aligning those tactics to a marketing strategy that she said she was trying to, a business goals that she was trying to achieve through this marketing strategy. And when I was able to do that for her and make that connection, that light went off right there in her head. And she was like, I see what you're saying now. I have no reason to believe that we couldn't. Send me the proposal right away. I'll get it signed, and we'll move forward with you. And all that did Butch, is it just helped me build trust, right? Like she knew in that moment that I wasn't just trying to sell her something, that I was literally, you know, aligned with her business goals and doing what was right for her to help her grow her business. Now, I don't know like how it gets any better than that, right? And so that's kind of that way that I've used ChatGPT lately to help me be a more effective communicator. I think is a better way of saying it. Not a better salesperson, but a better communicator, and bring value and trust with every conversation.
Well, Stephen, that's a great story. Um, you kind of left me speechless.
Sorry.
As we wrap up here, what's one thing you would share with baby boomers and Gen Xers that might
Mm.
be, let's say, challenged with making this shift to at least including social platforms, AI into their sales strategy?
Yeah. Again, I believe it's so critically important to understand, who your ideal client is, and and who you're speaking to, what that message is, so what you're saying, and really connecting, anyone that may be interested in your business and services to the problem that you solve. And that is the critical piece. Clarity in your messaging is critical. You obviously you don't want to confuse anyone, but being on message, having a clear message and it being the same message on all of those platforms is vitally important. You can't say one thing here and say something different there. I think that is really it. I mean, I know that a part of my process, I love to put myself right in the middle of a prospect's buyer journey, right? So I am now that person looking for your business. And what would I want to see? What would I want to know? And how and where would I want that presented for it to be the most effective? And if I'm noticing or observing that we're kind of missing opportunities along that buyer journey, then those are great areas and gaps in your marketing strategy that we can really start to help you fill and identify. So, where I would say is that it, again, if you're used to that one-to-one marketing, the shift is now one-to-many. And in order for that to be effective, you need to be, concise. You need to have clarity, and that message needs to be the same across all of your digital marketing assets for it to be truly effective and resonate.
Well, thanks, Stephen.
Yeah.
This is another thing we could have a show on, but you said it, so I just wanted to share it. Earlier, I said people want to know who you are before they care what you do. I also believe they want to believe you can solve their problem before they care how you do it.
Yep, I agree.
Stephen, I really appreciate you being on the show today. We're going to have to do this again for sure.
Would love to.
If you're out there and you're struggling with the kind of the shifts in how things are done now, just remember, this isn't about starting over. It's about evolving. And if you need help, feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact Stephen. His information's right there. And I will say this, and I'm going to speak for you, Stephen. If we can help you, we will. And if we can't help you, there's a really good chance we know somebody who can, and we'll point you in that direction. So appreciate you watching the show today. We'll be back next week at 10 o'clock on Friday. So have a great rest of your week, your weekend.
Thanks. You too, Butch. Thanks for